Hello again. Chris, Lee, and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to predict and preview Mississippi State's road trip to Tuscaloosa, Alabama to face the Alabama Crimson Tide. You can catch that 7:30 Central on the SEC Network. This is a rematch of the earlier game, which Alabama won 82-74. Bart Torvik has got Alabama winning the rematch 84-75. Ken Palm has got Alabama also by 9 points in that. Before you give you some analysis and some picks on this game, a reminder, this channel brought to you by BetOnline. It is playoff time. The road to Las Vegas has run through San Francisco and Baltimore. BetOnline is your number one source for playoff football odds, stats, trends, and lines. Bet everything from point spreads to hundreds of player performance props. Head to BetOnline today to get updated on all the action. BetOnline. The game starts here. Blake, contrast to styles. Mississippi State has got a little shooting with Josh Hubbard, so a little better offensive team than it was a year ago. But under Chris Jans, State's bread has always been buttered on the defensive end. On the other hand, Alabama, which as of Thursday morning, number 2 team in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency. I believe that's flipped now. Yeah, Purdue has gone ahead, I guess, of Alabama and adjusted offensive efficiency. But hey, we're splitting hairs here. Alabama is a phenomenal offensive team, can get scoring from many places. This is an interesting stylistic matchup that, again, when Alabama's way away from home the first time these teams played.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you look at what Alabama's done at home this season, and they just came off of putting up 109 against LSU. They beat Auburn in a good game. They put up 93 against Missouri. They blew out South Carolina, who, as we know now, is one of the hottest teams in the SEC. Even before that, go back Eastern Kentucky, they scored 111. Arkansas State 89. 98 against Mercer, 102 against South Alabama, 102 against Indiana State, 105 against Morehead State. So when you're playing Alabama at home, you got a challenge because they are a team that, again, is so good offensively, but man, they've been really, really good at home. Now, some of those offensive numbers, scoring-wise, have come down a little bit from scoring in the hundreds every game to, just occasionally scoring the 100-point game now, which they did do against LSU, as we said. So you got a red-hot Alabama team taking on a Mississippi State team that's kind of struggling a little bit because of having to play on the road in the SEC. And that's what, you remember back, we were talking about it going into SEC play, knowing as well as South Carolina had played to that point. We said there may not be a tougher first half schedule than what Mississippi State has. And it's kind of played out that way because, they've had these road games at South Carolina, at Kentucky, at Florida, now at Ole Miss, coming off the 86-82 loss there. But then it's like they've had the tough home games where they've beaten Tennessee, they've beaten Auburn. But now it's a different story where they lose that game to Alabama the first time around. You look back at the stats, Alabama still hit 10 threes, only shot 36%. Alabama got the free throw line 26 times, which some of that I know was late. But Mississippi State, what was the story of that game, Chris? And it's the reason I always hesitate with Mississippi State, knowing that I think there are going to be games that are close. It's their poor free throw shooting. And remember, they went 15-27 in that game against Alabama the first time around. And that was it, where they had some of those free throws late that they could have, kept it right there, had a chance, but could never get there. And so it sets up, like you said, a very interesting clash of styles here that Alabama was able to play the way they wanted to play the first time around. But I'm curious to see if we see Mississippi State step up here with a big defensive performance, because in all honesty, this is a lot more pressure on Mississippi State here than Alabama, knowing that if State loses, they drop to 3-6 in the SEC.
I don't know if this is the biggest storyline in the game. In fact, I'm sure it's not. But one thing to watch, Sean Davis, who was pretty good for them a year ago, he's just not had the same type of year this year. He's never been a great shooter, but he's been better than this. And he had probably his best game of the season, 15 points last time out, offensive rating of 131. I guess that's the third best offensive rating he's had all year looking at Ken Palm. But it's the best that he's had in a while. We talked about Josh Hubbard, who kind of carried State for a stretch last game. State is never going to be a high upside offensive team. And remember, State played without Tolu Smith earlier, which affects some of the numbers. But if you're looking for like a little sneaky storyline in this, maybe that's it.
Yeah, it could be because, like you said, I mean, I think if you're Mississippi State, you're trying to find some positives offensively for sure. Because again, this is a team where we came into the season saying they gotta shoot it better, they gotta take care of the ball. Those have still been struggles, and specifically, like we said, it's the shooting outside of the paint, basically. Because they're a good offensive rebounding team, they're a team that can make twos, but you just need other options to step up. I mean, we were kind of pointing out just the Tolu Smith aspect of it. If he has a bad game, what do you do offensively? Well, they were still able to, like you said, score 82 points when he had 9. So like it wasn't really a big game for him. And so, whether it is a Davis, obviously you mentioned Josh Hubbard and what he brings to the table 3-point wise, they're going to need, think about Alabama's guard play and all that. They're going to need a big Josh Hubbard game here. They're going to need a big Davis game, like you mentioned. Moore and all those guys. They're all going to have to play well to beat a team like Alabama on the road. And it's kind of what I go back to here is it's one of those things where, I mean, think about it. Mississippi State is still, and we've always pointed this out as one of their strengths, is it's defending the 3. Like statistically, they're one of the best teams out there at defending the 3. I mean, they're top 10 in the country still, 28.5%. Teams just have not shot a great percentage against them. Although, as we said, Alabama did hit 10 threes, and they did just come off a game where Ole Miss hit 12 threes against them at home. As we know, too, Ole Miss is one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. So, it's kind of a tough spot, you feel like, for Mississippi State, even for a team that statistically has done pretty well defending the 3. It's just, I always say, Chris, it's Alabama's just a different beast. And so my worry here for Mississippi State is just, can they keep up offensively? And I think, what you have to factor in here is it's just Alabama they continue, in my opinion, to get better on the defensive end of the floor.
Yeah,
And
that's a big storyline.
it's just
big.
If they're playing well defensively, Mississippi State has, again, not been a great road team. So I feel like there's a lot in Alabama's favor here. As we know, it's been a week for road teams in the SEC, but it just feels like there's a lot of matchup things in Alabama's favor.
I want to ask you a question, and you may not have the answer, but how many times has Alabama not shot the 3 really well this year? And part B to that is that because sometimes you don't shoot the 3 well because you just don't shoot it well and it'll fall. And sometimes it's because you're defended. And I'm just wondering, the reason I ask, Alabama moves the ball so quickly. Like, I don't know how you can defend that all the time. And I'm just wondering, how much ability does anybody have to stop what Alabama does well offensively with the 3? If Alabama's not just having one of those nights where they're missing wide open shots.
All right, we're going to go through this real quick, but I think this is going to kind of blow your mind when you realize this, because you probably say it and you probably hear it and you're like, oh, well, that makes sense. But when you actually hear it, like, you're going to be like, whoa, wow, that makes sense. But it's kind of a wow factor. I'm going to run through all of Alabama's shooting performances at home from 3 this year. And this is just going to be like, oh, like, this is why Alabama's Alabama. 10 of 23 against Morehead State, 44%. 13 of 23 against Indiana State, 57%. 12 of 23 against South Alabama, 52%. 8 of 19 against Mercer, 42%. Arkansas State, 13 of 31 for 42%. Eastern Kentucky, 19 of 38 for 50%. Liberty was semi-home, so that wasn't in Coleman Coliseum. South Carolina, 15 of 34 for 44%. Missouri, 13 of 27 for 48%. Auburn, 11 of 30 for 37%. LSU, 14 of 34 for 41%. Like, just think about that.
I'm keeping a mental note, and they, for the longest time, I'm like, okay, the lowest they've shot here is 42%. and then you throw a 41 and a 37. I mean, like 37%, if you shoot 37% on threes, that's still pretty good. And that's Alabama's low water mark at home.
Well, the SEC as a conference is shooting 33% from three, and that's 25th nationally. So you think about it, 37% feels far and away like above the average based on SEC teams shooting the three. So the question you asked though was how many bad shooting games they had. Well, it seems pretty simple to me. 30% against
None.
Ohio State, neutral court.
Yeah.
31% against Clemson. Now that's the game I left out purposely. Okay, take all those games.
Okay, that was in Tuscaloosa.
Right. So take all those games that I gave you at home. I left out the Clemson game to tell you that there is that one in there. There's always that one possibility that, but still, like we say that, they hit 11. I don't think the offense was necessarily what beat them in that game. They still hit 11 threes. So, and you're still basically shooting the average in the SEC at that point. So, and then the other just poor shooting performances at Creighton, 4 of 22, at Arizona, 8 of 40, and then at Tennessee, 4 of 21. So, all that to say that, I left Clemson as the outlier because they still hit 11. And so it's just, if you're banking on trends, even against a great defensive team like Mississippi State, statistically from three, how do you not still think Alabama's going to come out here and hit double-digit threes? And I know what Alabama fans are thinking right now. They're like, oh, my gosh, Blake just absolutely jinxed us. We're going to come out and shoot 5 of 40 from three here, and we're toast. But don't blame it on me, okay, if that happens, because the trend suggests that this team just finds ways to – and it's that streak of offense that Alabama has that I just don't think Mississippi State has. So
I think Mississippi State's a really good bowl team. Maybe not great, but good. 6th seed in the NCAA tournament, good. 6 to 7 kind of team, in my opinion. But let's not overthink it. All the stuff about 3-point shots and Alabama's at home, and I don't have to. State could pull an upset. It's capable, but I don't have to give a lot of thought to making Alabama the pick here.
The only reason I would even probably hesitate would just be they didn't do it against Georgia. They've cleaned it up a little bit, but I said, the one thing that worries me sometimes about Alabama is just any sloppy turnovers. They had 13 at Mississippi State the first time around. It ultimately didn't matter. And look, if you want to take it from a number standpoint, they only shot 36% from three, in that regard, but they got to the free throw line. They shot it well from inside the arc. They did a really good job against a good defensive team. And that was another game where Alabama started slow. But that would be the only thing is if Mississippi State can find a way just to force some turnovers here to really make it difficult, kind of be a little more physical, those kind of things. And the offensive rebounding aspect too for Mississippi State. I think they've got to get easy opportunities, just on second chance points and all of that. I think that's going to be a huge aspect of this game. But yeah, I mean, I ran through all the stuff about Alabama at home, but we say that, Chris, man, it just seems like it's been one of those weeks where the teams that have felt like they're in a good spot at home just have not found ways to win some of these games. But it's just, I mean, on paper, Alabama beat Mississippi State the first time around. They're in Tuscaloosa. They have a next level offensively that I don't think Mississippi State has. But would I be surprised if Mississippi State made this a grind potentially? No. But if Alabama comes out and hitting a lot of threes early, I just wonder if Mississippi State can keep up. So, yeah, I'll also pick Alabama in this one. Now, the question is, Chris, since we're the only two picking, does this officially qualify for the Southeastern 14 reverse mojo or however you want to do this? Like, is this
kiss of death?
There you go. Does this qualify? Like, because otherwise, like, I feel like a lot of pressure now if there's just two of us picking these games.
Of course, it qualifies.
Oh boy!
You're the one. We've established this. You're the one that controls this anyway. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think.
Great to know. I'm picking the referees. Then I can't win either way here. We'll see. We'll see how this turns out. We'll have Max back for some of the other picks, but we'll see how it turns out for some of these that it's just you and I from a scheduling purpose having to record these. So we'll see what happens with these games.
Can't wait to watch it. And that, man, that's the case for most SEC games this year. This has been, if you're just a casual SEC fan watching basketball, man, you need to tune in. These games every night are pretty good, most of them. And they're fascinating to watch, and we look forward to talking about them. We preview them, we recap them, we give you power rankings, we do fantasy drafts. We should be your home for SEC basketball. We hope we are. We also cover baseball and football with a lot of passion too. So hit that subscribe button. It is free. Hit the like button. That helps us out. Tell a friend. For Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. This is Southeastern 14, presented by BetOnline.